Hi, so I'm just going to go over some stuff as we move on to because Haruki Murakami's um, Norwegian Wood. I posted to week nine a couple of songs, the orchestral version of Norwegian Wood by the Beatles, and then some rare version that when you listen to it, you'll really be able to follow the lyrics and get a sense of just how much the novel is sort of playing out the lyrics of the song. So it's important to know that the title comes from the famous Beatles song from Revolver, Norwegian Wood. And yeah, I mean, the things I want to talk about are largely about three or four main categories. One, and they all kind of revolve around this idea of the postmodern. The postmodern is a discussion of how, after things like World War II, when people um, became very skeptical of government power, and the bombs were dropped on Japan. Japan reconstitutes in a just a very different way than even Germany did, and embraces Western culture at an alarming rate, so that by 1968, when the novel is taking place, it's become so globalized. So some of the concepts of postmodern are about how things that seem a particular way aren't that way, and so we get characters like Kazuki, who seems to be really happy, but is clearly not. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done that. And Stormtrooper, who seems like, the title suggests, a kind of Nazi, actually ends up being a pretty sweet guy. And, literally, Naoku says, people think I'm this very delicate girl, but actually I'm not. I'm a lumberjack. And so there's a lot of these themes of, a lot of these instances of the theme of things not being what they seem like they are. Even that firefly that he watches at the end of, I think, chapter three, the firefly leaves a trace in the air, and that trace is not there. Um, so we have this theme of things. Naoki literally says, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Another idea that carries over actually from the last novel is the idea of being able to recreate yourself. So Kazuki dies, and Toru Watanabe moves from his small town to Tokyo, and he says he wants to get away from it all to sort of recreate himself. Um, but when he gets there, of course, just like with Willie Chandran, he's introduced to all these different kinds of lives, and he becomes sort of multiple selves, right? So he's one way with Nagasawa, when they go and they have sex with all his girls, and then he's quite another way with Naoku and with Midori. And so we get a sense of this idea that you are who you want to be, and you can create an identity, and you can be a different identity at different times. Even Midori says, right, that she used to have the long hair, and she cuts it, and she talks about the way that is a really important way of sort of recreating herself. And the idea of cutting your hair, and being different from other people, I think that's also a very postmodern idea, that when we finally get to this globalized moment where everybody's listening to the Beatles, everybody's thinking about protests in universities, everybody's reading the same kinds of books, um, the idea of difference becomes more important, that you single yourself out. Um, but yeah, I wanted to talk about the globalization moment where um, the you know the fact that he's obsessed with American literature, and the fact that they're teaching American literature and they're teaching Greek tragedy just the way that they would in an American university. I mean, sure, they are also reading Japanese authors, but so are you now. And so there comes this moment where everybody across countries is really engaged in the same kinds of information, same kinds of ideas, um, and that's globalization. So the final thing I want to talk about is the idea running through the text that the the writing of things actually produces reality. That reality is constructed. So Midori says that she works for a company and she writes um, episodes for the maps. And she goes and she does research, and sometimes these events, she can find them, and she says, like, this is a really cool place in the world because this thing happened here. And then sometimes she can't find something, so she just kind of makes something up, and the map people love it, right? And so she's literally kind of creating realities just by writing it down. When Toru says that well, he doesn't say present when he's called in class. His very omission changes the reality, right? So he's actually in class, but because he doesn't say something, it doesn't seem like he is in class. So he's got the ability to create that reality, I guess, in the teacher's grade book. Um, but yeah, there's a sense that you can create this kind of reality, and that there's a kind of false reality, right? The haircut makes the person, whether or not you say you're there creates your identity. And then there's the truth, right? The existentialist conversation about all the deaths that happened and the very seriousness in the novel that Toru talks about. And so there are various instances where death is just discussed in really serious terms, and there's no faking death. There's no postmodern to the death. There's no sense that it's just an appearance or that it's not real. It is real. It's death. There's nothing more serious than death. So those are the main ideas I want us to be going into this text thinking about. Clearly, it's a text that's kind of accessible to us. That's obviously really important. We want to be thinking about the ways that the text actually speaks to American sensibilities. And ultimately, what is Japanese about this book? I think that's what we want to be thinking about. But yes, do start actually kind of going in, picking one of these. I'm looking forward to catching up with the reading, both for Nepal and now for Murakami. Good luck.